prolactin hormone. As you all know, prolactin, we talked about the hypothalamus and the pituitary, and how the hypothalamic hormones, they regulate pituitary hormone secretions. The seven releasing hormones are made in the hypothalamus. They are the TRH, which induces thyroid, TSH from anterior pituitary. Then you have CRH, which induces ACTH from the anterior pituitary. Then you have gonadotropin releasing hormone, which induces secretion of FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. Then you have growth hormone releasing hormone and growth hormone releasing inhibiting hormone, where the balance between the both decides the induction of release of growth hormone from anterior pituitary. Then again you have prolactin releasing factor, and there are prolactin inhibiting hormone, which is in the form of a dopamine, which again the balance basically decides the secretion of prolactin from the anterior pituitary. So this is the small diagrammatic presentation. As you can see, you can see over here, as far as prolactin is concerned, the major dominating factor is the dopamine, which supersedes which inhibits the prolactin secretion from the anterior pituitary, and it is constantly released from the hypothalamus. So the dominant response to anterior pituitary is basically inhibitory from the hypothalamus through the dopamine neurotransmitter. So what is prolactin? Prolactin is a protein hormone. It's basically a peptide, 189 peptide, 189 genes of amino acid present on chromosome 6, and basically it is produced mostly in the lactotrophs of the anterior lobe of the pituitary, and which comprise about 3 to 5% of the total cells. Then you have just not the pituitary synthesis of prolactin in certain amounts through the endometrium, myometrium, brain, breast, prostate, skin, adipose tissue. Have we lost the connection? There is a electrical shutdown over here. Have we lost connection, or are you with me? So okay, are you able to hear me? No, you can see the slides, I guess. Are you able to see slides? Okay, fine, very good. We'll continue. So now a very important thing is, as you can see, prolactin, the regulation of prolactin through the anterior pituitary gland is through the inhibitory factor, which is a neurotransmitter in the form of dopamine, and then you have a TR releasing factor also in the form prolactin releasing factor, which is analogous to TRH, which stimulates secretion of TRH and causes invariably stimulates secretion of TSH from the anterior pituitary, and it stimulates prolactin. But the dominant effect is inhibition through the neurotransmitter, which is dopamine, as the arcuate nucleus in the hypothalamus is acted upon by the dopamine, and there's a D2 receptors, special D2 receptor in the hypothalamus, and through this dopamine it induces its action on the inhibitory action on the hypothalamus, rather on the pituitary. These neurotransmitter dopamine, it binds the D2 receptor on the pituitary. I was talking about hypothalamus, I'm sorry about it. Basically they bind on the pituitary and they inhibit the release of prolactin. Then so it is, as you can see, there is a constant tonic inhibitory control by the hypothalamus through the release of dopamine, As you can see, there is in pregnancy you have increased level of estrogen that tend to have a positive effect on the release of prolactin. And in suckling, which is a very strong response, and it basically overrides the dopamine inhibitory control, and it signals and then it signals for the milk to be ejected from the breast, and the ejection is finally taken care of by the oxytocin hormone. So the suckling increases the prolactin level. This is an important statement there. The suckling increases the prolactin levels markedly, almost 100-fold, and it overrides the dopamine's inhibitory control. The uh, the stimulating hormones, they have a fair play once the suckling response takes place. So the function of prolactin, a very unique function, is pleiotropic. That is, it causes LH and FSH suppression during breastfeeding, so that during the tenure of breastfeeding, there is an inhibition, that is a negative feedback of the prolactin on the gonadotropin releasing hormone on the hypothalamus, and as there is a negative feedback to the gonadotropin releasing hormone on the hypothalamus, there is a decreased secretion of LH and FSH from the anterior pituitary, and because of the decreased secretion, the breastfeeding women, they tend to be amenorrheic. So there will be a phase of amenorrhea as long as the prolactin is present in a substantial amount. Then there is another action is preparation of mammary gland for lactation at the alveolar epithelium of the breast tissues. They and the glands, they undergo pleiotropic modifications in anticipation of the milk production and milk ejection soon after birth. What is the beauty about prolactin, that since you can see it acts on the adipose tissue, and it has a certain adipogenesis and lipid metabolism action, and it acts on the breast in the form of milk formation, and it acts on the liver, induces certain immunity as well as growth metabolism, and then it also acts on the pancreas. So it has a kind of endocrine as well as paracrine and autocrine, all the three kind of action. So it behaves like in autocrine, it behaves more like a cytokine, and as a paracrine function, you can see it acts on the uh, it also acts like a cytokine and growth hormone, like a hormone, like an autocrine substance would. And as a paracrine, it acts on the extrapituitary, it has extrapituitary sources, and it acts on the extrapituitary glands too. Then immune modulation, it basically helps in the modulation of macrophages, granulocyte, and all dendritic cells, B cells, T cells. So it has a immune enhancement property, and it helps to certain extent, as it say, usually in the stress or chronic stress, there is a increased production of prolactin, as it helps in altering the neural circuits to help the individual to cope with stress. So it has a neurogenesis and neuroprotection action. Metabolic function, as I talked about, it acts on the adipose tissue, liver, pancreas, brain, and basically it causes adipogenesis and adipocyte differentiation, and that's how it modulates lipid metabolism. And then there is also it regulates the secretion of several adipokines, and just causes stimulation of leptin and inhibition of adiponectin production. And then you can see it has a certain anti-angiogenetic properties, so in a way it helps in healing too. And the through the stimulation of leptin, basically the food intake is inhibited to some extent. There's some messages. Just a minute. I'll just check. Oh, okay, fine. So back to the back to our slides. So factors which affects prolactin secretions. Factors which increases prolactin secretion, for sure, prolactin releasing hormone, estrogen during pregnancy, oxytocin, because it causes muscle contraction to expel milk. So in anticipation of milk production, only after the milk production takes place, then the milk could be ejected. So oxytocin induces secretion of prolactin, vasoactive intestinal peptides, thyrotropin releasing hormone. As I said, the prolactin releasing hormone is analogous to thyrotropin releasing hormone in its structure and chemical constituents to a great extent. So they even in patients with hypothyroid, you will find the secondary hypothyroid, where you have less of the TRH and less of the TSH due to less of the TRH. So in such cases, you might find a patient presenting to you with the decreased prolactin level, and that might lead to amenorrhea and agalactorrhea and all that kind of things. Then breastfeeding, stress, sleep, dopamine antagonists, especially the antipsychotic drugs, since they are the anti-dopamine, so they were definitely going to increase PRL release, and also chest wall trauma and stress. Factors basically inhibiting PRL, dopamine, as known as prolactin inhibiting hormone, and the bromocriptine or dopamine agonist. Any dopamine agonist, they all the drugs tend to inhibit PRL secretion. So regulation of secretion. So most important that constantly prolactin is under the inhibitory response of the dopamine through the hypothalamus, but during certain conditions, and especially the breastfeeding is a major stimulus of prolactin production, and it is triggered by PRH, and the PIH takes us backseat when there is a breastfeeding. And in males, the influence of PIH predominates because there is no breastfeeding stage in male, and in females, then you have the PRL level keeps on increasing and decreasing in accordance with the estrogen blood levels, as the low estrogen levels tend to stimulate PIH release, and a high estrogen level tends to promote release of PRH and PRL. So when once the mother no longer needs to produce milk, the dopamine starts inhibiting prolactin by signaling the hypothalamus to stop it. And we're talking about the conditions. There are several conditions which might lead to hyperprolactinoma and hypoprolactinoma. So hyperprolactinoma is basically an increased PRL hormone secretion by the anteropituitary gland, and the common causes of hyperprolactinoma are stress, medications, as we talked about, the antipsychotic drugs, which acts on the dopamine, which are basically dopamine antagonists, primary hypothyroidism, that is PRL. This is primary. You're not talking about the secondary. Primary hyperthyroidism gets stimulated by TRS, since there is a lesser amount of TSH with higher amount of T3 and T4, and because in primary hypothyroidism, since you have a lesser amount of T3 T4, and that invariably going to have a feedback through the feedback effect on the hypothalamus, which tends to cause increased TRH level, which tends to increase TSH level. So in primary hypothyroidism, the PRL is stimulated by increase of TRH, Then you have pituitary gland tumors, which can be microadenoma or macroadenoma. Microadenoma is any pituitary gland tumor with a size less than 1 centimeter, and the macroadenoma is any pituitary gland tumor which is size more than 1 centimeter. So the one thing is important about these tumors, they manifest as a hyperprolactinoma, but there can be hypofunctioning adenomas which present as hyperprolactinoma also. Then the other aspect of the hyperprolactinoma, the isolated PRL production might not be there. There are chances that they might present with associated pituitary hormone excesses like growth hormone and ACTH. And then you have prolactinoma, especially the non-cancerous tumor of the pituitary gland, which especially secretes PRL. And then you have idiopathic hypersecretion, that is impaired secretion of the dopamine, then through the chest volleys, and then chronic renal failure, because in chronic renal failure the metabolism of prolactin does not take place, or rather it is inhibited, and so there might be hyperprolactinoma. Symptoms in women is straightforward, since prolactin is supposed for the it's inhibits the any excess of PRL through the negative feedback. It will inhibit gonadotropin releasing hormone and invariably decrease the secretion of FSH and LH. So it will lead to oligomenorrhea, amenorrhea. The patient might have galactorrhea through the action of the prolactin on the mammary gland tissues. Then infertility, even hirsutism, because it can cause testosterone or induction, so it might cause hirsutism or osteoporosis, because osteoporosis because there will be osteoclastic differentiation and osteogenesis will be impaired, so the excess PRL can lead to osteoporosis. Then in men, basically in men, hyperprolactinemia can manifest as gynecomastia, which will be usually be which can be tender, and impotency, sterility and infertility can be or erectile dysfunction can be one of the common feature of hyperprolactinoma. Then invariably osteoporosis. So other things apart from these prolactin, the chemical effects, you can have a physical effect through the because of the tumor mass effect. They can cause, because it is very close to the optic chiasma, so it can have a mass effect, or it's a visual field effect, which is especially called bitemporal hemianopia. It can be unilateral or bilateral, where since bitemporal, as the name suggests, the temporal vision is gone on the retina, so the patient will have a tunnel vision, and it can be because of the mass effect. You can have a headache. A headache is a one complaint which might, in a case of microadenoma, even pituitary small masses, or when macroadenoma, the male patient or even the female may first come to you with the feature of constant headache. So headache is a very important feature. Causes and symptoms of hyperprolactinoma. The hyperprolactinoma, you have a very important terminology, which is Sehan syndrome. And Sehan syndrome is basically it's the ischemic necrosis of the pituitary glands due to blood loss during or after childbirth. Like postpartumly, there is an excess blood loss. There will be ischemic necrosis of the pituitary gland. Because of that, they can have deficiency of prolactin, and they can be agalactic, and because of that, the patient will be complaining to you as galactorrhea. The milk secretion won't be there, and you can have other associated pituitary hormone deficiency, especially the growth hormone deficiency, and the patient might complain of hypoglycemia and low blood sugar in the plasma, and that will manifest as irritability or restlessness, or sweating, and everything will be present in a especially in the postpartum female who are hypotensive, or there has been excess blood loss during the delivery. And since they won't be having a milk production because of deficiency of the prolactin, there are chances of the patients may fall in depression and detachment from the infant. So then you have hypopituitarism, which can be pan hypopituitarism, where a deficiency of all the hormone along with the prolactin, and that could be due to the mass effect or any hypothalamus hematomas or malignancy, or it can be mainly because of autoimmune disease. Uh, and the other causes can be excess dopamine, autoimmune disease, growth hormone deficiency, head injury, and infection. Infection, especially tuberculosis, is very common. One common, which is a granulomatous infection and a granulomatous lesion of the uh, hypopituitary of the pituitary. Then the symptoms with the hyperprolactinoma, the patient will have a delayed puberty, or again they will suffer from infertility and agalacturia, and in male there will be impotency, again an abnormal spermatogenesis. Uh, because of the decreased prolactin level, you will have a decrease in the spermatogenesis by the Sertoli cells, which which can lead to infertility. But the symptom of what's very important thing to note down, the symptom of hypoprolactinoma, it does not manifest in male so often. It's one of the very rare entity in male. So diagnosis is, depend on the history of medication, or there is a history of oligomenorrhea or amenorrhea or galacturia, and physical examination, and through these several laboratory tests you'll get a pregnancy test, prolactin test, you get free T4, free T3, TSH, and then you get it LH and TSH and testosterone test done. And then for any central cause you can get an MRI scan, which can easily rule out the prolactinoma, or for any visual field defects you can get it any optic nerve lesion or bitemporal hemianopia that can be seen on the visual field. And the treatment is basically for hyperprolactinoma, you need dopamine to inhibit prolactin secretion, and that will be in the form of dopamine agonist, as you have bromocriptine and cabagulin. Both are the agonists. Cabagulin has slightly lesser side effects, and bromocriptine basically given in the dose of cabagulin given in the dose of 25 milligram, started as twice weekly and can be increased to zero point 0.5 milligram up to 0.5 milligram BD weekly, and bromocriptine is given in the dose of 2.5 to 5 milligram HS, that is during the night and in a single dose, and that can be continued as far as prolactin level is high. Then a surgical removal is the for any microadenoma or macroadenoma, surgical removal is the definite treatment of choice. And in thyroid abnormalities, you can have a patient coming with the primary hypothyroid with for that the thyroid and taking care of the thyroid abnormality will take care of the hyperprolactinoma. And for ovarian insufficiency like estrogen or progesterone imbalance, you can go on for the hormonal therapy. So that is all about prolactin, and now we'll swiftly switch to oxytocin, which was left in this section. We talked about the antidiuretic hormone, their action. We talked about SADH, that is a common cause for normovolemic hyponatremia. Then we talked about ADH, that is or diabetes insipidus, which is the most common cause for primary hypernatremia. Now we'll talk about oxytocin. It's a very small topic. oxytocin. So what is oxytocin? It's a this is a postpituitary hormone. It is secreted by paraventricular nucleus and partly by supraoptic nuclei of the hypothalamus, and it's conducted through the axons of this nucleus and through their end fibers. It's transported to the posterior pituitary, and then from the nerve fibers of hypothalamic hypophyseal tract, and then the oxytocin is stored in the nerve endings, and as there is a suitable stimuli, the oxytocin is released into the blood, and it is secreted in both in males and females, but it has a more role to play in females, especially for milk ejection during the childbirth, which is a very common and a very important function of the oxytocin, because the breast milk is so damn important for the growing infants or growing babies. Chemistry wise, the oxytocin is a polypeptide, a small polypeptide, a 9 amino acid, and it has a half life of about 6 minutes. Action especially on the mammary glands, which is a milk letdown or milk ejection reflex action of oxytocin, as it acts on the myometrium of the alveolar epithelial cells, and there it helps in the milk ejection. In conjunction with the the action of the prolactin hormone, which prepares the mammary gland for the milk production and subsequent ejection. Then action of the uterus, it also has it acts on the myometrium, and it has a myometrial contractility action and helps in the childbirth too, during especially during the phase of childbirth. The oxytocin release is enhanced, and even it is given in an exogenous form to enhance the action of myometrium for the convenient expulsion of the fetus. So action of the mammary gland, it causes ejection of milk from the mammary gland, it causes contraction of the myoepithelial cells and flow of milk from the alveoli of mammary gland to the exterior through the duct system and the nipple. And the whole process where the milk ejected from the alveoli of the mammary gland is called milk ejection reflex. So it's a neuroendocrine axis. So this is how it takes. Once the suckling reflex starts, when the baby latch onto the mammary on the areola, the impulse discharge from the touch receptors on the alveola, these are carried by the somatic efferent nerves, and it goes to the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei in the hypothalamus, and through the that causes a release of oxytocin, and invariably the oxytocin causes release of contraction of myoepithelial cell, leading to production of milk. So since it is initiated by nerve factors and completed by hormonal action, it is called neuroendocrine reflex, and during this reflex there is a large amount of oxytocin released by the positive feedback mechanism. So this is how it basically takes place. We'll see in the diagram. Action on the uterus, it acts on the pregnant uterus and on the non-pregnant uterus. On the pregnant uterus, during the period of pregnancy, its secretion is basically inhibited by estrogen and progesterone and certain placental hormone. At the end of pregnancy, or the secretion of these two hormones decreases suddenly, and the secretion of oxytocin increases, and it starts contracting the uterus and helps in the expulsion of the fetus. It's again an example of neuroendocrine reflex and a positive feedback mechanism. So what happens as the cervix dilates, the fetal descent through the birth canal, the receptor in the wall of the cervix are stimulated and causing which respond by discharging impulses, which is carried by the afferent nerve fibers to the supraoptic and paraventricular nuclei in hypothalamus, and then the efferent impulse that causes release of oxytocin, and it travels through the blood, acts on the wall of the uterus and causes powerful contraction of the uterus, which leads to the which helps in the onset of the labor. On non-pregnant uterus, it facilitates the transport of sperm through the female genital tract up to the fallopian tube, and by producing the uterine contraction during sexual intercourse. It's a very important function of oxytocin, that stimulation of receptors in the wall of the vagina. Discharge of the afferent goes to the hypothalamus, and there the nuclei in the hypothalamus is stimulated, and that secretes oxytocin. It acts on the uterine wall, and causes its contraction towards the fallopian tubes. In male, it helps oxytocin increases during ejaculation, and here again it facilitates release of sperm into the urethra by causing the contraction of smooth muscle fibers in the reproductive tracts, particularly vas deferens. So basically, as you can see, how it acts on the male, the oxytocin, uh, apart from the important reproductive function it has in and the for for the in female and in male, it has the oxytocin been promoted as a pro-social hormone, and it has mediated many social behaviors, and it also called love hormone because it helps in the bonding. It tends to promote which is something called trust theory, where it helps for a period of time. It helps in the enhancement of trust and enhancement of bonding, especially that is how the mothers are strongly attached to the babies, and over even its preponderance in females have leads to increase oxytocin in females have been associated with trust and bonding function, functionality in females, and with the decrease, it also decreases cortisol release and anxiety in response to social stress, and it reduces amygdala activity to fear for or threatening visual images or emotional faces. It increases trust behavior and increases the ability to interpret mental states, and also it has been tend to be seen with visual recognition or especially increases the amount of time spent gazing at the eyes when viewing faces. And one of the very important meta-analysis which is done by Van Azendorn and Beckerman-Kranberg, and that's supporting the notion that the intranasal oxytocin in healthy individuals enhances the recognition of emotion and elevates the level of trust in established relationship. In addition to its pro-social effect, one of the most intriguing factors is it has been shown to be involved in jealousy, gloating, and outgroup discrimination. And the bottom line is the oxytocin level is high in females. So always remember all these characteristics for a change. And what there is one important negative aspect or the dark aspect of oxytocin is it has been associated with increase in individuals with the same characteristics, and they tend to have a more of a groupism. It promotes a groupism notion, and it has also been shown to have a xenophobic effect. So that is a hatred for the for the individuals with the different characters or with the other group. So even it has shown a seeds of xenophobia, that is hatred for the other nationalities. So that's all about oxytocin. The oxytocin deficiency as such, any syndrome related to oxytocin deficiency or excess has been yet been detected so far, and the reason behind it, since the oxytocin tend to stay it is usually being produced during special states like breastfeeding or during reproductive phase. and the oxytocin excess or deficiency as such has not been found in an isolated state, but even if there is any deficiency or efficiency, it is usually along with the other hormonal state as deficiency or efficiency. So this much for the oxytocin hormone, and oxytocin has been also been used as a for exogenously used. Oxytocin has been used for delivery purposes, usually especially in the labor by the obs and gynecologist, and from here on more about oxytocin, exogenous oxytocin, and thereof will be taught to you by the obs and gynecologist. But as far as the hormone deficiency state or any excess state has not been defined so far. So anything if you want to know or you want to ask, feel free. Ask anything you want to ask related to the topic so far we have discussed. हेलो, हम आधे घंटे में आएंगे. हाँ. I hope there is no queries. Very convenient recipients you are, a conformist I would say. So anyway, you can go through this topic and let me know if you have any query, and we'll take up I'm thinking of taking up Cushing syndrome in the next class. Cushing syndrome we'll take up ACTH, and Cushing syndrome we'll take up in the next class, and we'll wrap it up in the next class. Thank you so much for your patient listening. So we'll meet in the next class and we'll take up Cushing syndrome. So I take your leave. Thank you.